This is Writer Life, a podcast about writing, life, coffee and conversation with Rob and John Morgan.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Writer Life. Today I'm going to look at the subject of truth-seeking and just examine life, the world and literature, and just see how we can devise a method or look into ways in which we can start to understand what is actually the truth of everything that's going on around us. There used to be a time when we all pretty much knew what was the truth or real facts about most things. As I look at the world today, I feel it's now harder to gain what is the real facts about anything at all. The world appears polarized and politicized so much now that I think people have reached some sort of point where they no longer know who is and who's not actually being straight with them. I think if we actually sit back and just take a really long look or view of the world today and, look into every aspect of life, like the media and what we're told by people in positions of authority, I think to most of us it's quite clear that those who seek our votes at elections, well, they're not going to keep any of their promises at all. Because as is now the case with most politicians today, what they say and what they do appear to be two completely different things. I think everybody now understands, that they always have a hidden agenda. Usually one we all suspect is bought and paid for by some lobby group or large corporate interest. The views of the people appear to be somewhat irrelevant to them, as their main priority now is to keep themselves in power and in their political seats than actually doing anything that people ask of them. Doing what is good for the nation, which is actually what they were voted in for, is not always good for them, as it eliminates many of their rewards from the private enterprise sectors that woo them with rewards that will see them financially gain by one avenue or another, and set them up for life and give them a very luxurious retirement, I would imagine. My home nation of the UK is having a really rough time at the moment. I mean, people are suffering and really struggling at the moment. There's a lot of division over various factors, and as we've seen in recent days, the general populace, who are actually currently the majority of people in my home nation, they're hitting the streets and chanting things like, "Enough is enough." Now, it's as scary as it's also interesting. And as a writer, I've been paying some very careful attention to all of this and to all of the many cross arguments that are currently going on. And I'm taking note of what actually for me personally is a very rich source of material that I can then use for my writer life. I tend to sort of sit back and think about all of this, and I do try to consider it on a very deep level and be as sort of non-political and impartial as possible. And it actually appears to me at the moment that lies have become the new truth, and the truth is now seen as the lie. This is something that I know well. I've written it into every book I've ever written. In Heirs of the Kingdoms, Mason Knox is hell-bent on ruling and controlling everything, not unsimilar to certain characters today. And it's all of his rhetoric is very neatly hidden behind the lie of how he's building for a better world for everyone. That's a familiar line now. Build back better. We seem to see that in every nation across the Western world, spoken by its politicians. Now, obviously, by the last book of the series, which is book 8, Mason Knox is unmasked to show the real greed and all of his ambition, which is actually not for the benefit of the people, but for the sake of his own lavish lifestyle. His lie is also his truth, but it's based on warped and idealistic facts, which is actually something I see in most politicians all over the world today. You know, when I look back to my 20s, 30s and 40s, you know, politicians were a very, very different sort of breed than they are today. You know, it appears to me that the politicians who are now, to a degree, the ruling class of the world today, have some very, very idealized ideas. And to me, it comes across as if they don't really care whether or not that these ideals will benefit society. I'm not even convinced they believe they're completely true or there's any truth within them. I think they've just become so set in their own mindset and their own idealistic idea of what they want. They really have lost the ability to equate that to the rest of society. I mean, I can't deny I have absolutely no time for politicians these days. I don't think there's any political party I absolutely agree with at the moment. I see things within all politics that I simply just don't like. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it represents the actual people of the country. And so it's very difficult for me to cast a vote for anybody. But there does seem to be this new idealism sweeping through politics at the moment, and it's very kind of disjointed, and it's very sort of misrepresentative. I mean, it makes me giggle that they talk about misinformation whilst giving out misinformation. It really is quite a ridiculous scenario. And I think the House of Commons, which I once had great respect for, has just become a bit of a clown show, with nobody really being completely honest about anything. But it's not just politicians. You know, we're seeing this now throughout all of society. It's in friendships. People are not honest with each other. Friends are not deeply bonded together like they used to be. There's been some sort of separation where friends can't be honest with each other anymore, and they've all got a hidden agenda that benefits only them. I do feel like society is sliding slowly down some sort of slippery slope into selfishness and narcissism, and the whole world is now starting to fracture and divide. Seeking the truth of things is now so difficult. I mean, the corporate industry really is no better. Lies to the large multinational corporations, you know, they simply slip off the tongues of their spokespeople with great ease as they lie about the toxicity of their products, which they already know will actually bring harm to people. You know, in their own minds, the masses who buy from them are actually irrelevant as long as they get their money and appease their great gods, which are the fat cat shareholders who lap up the money without any consequence or conscience, I should say, or any kind of morality. You know, it's all there to feed their lifestyles of luxury and greed. It's like a numbers game, and the lives of the many who have no relevance next to the truth of the cash rolling in to line the massively growing, expanding coffers of the wealthy at the expense of the poor. I find it insulting that we judge countries now not on poverty or how well the poor are doing, A country is now judged for its status by how well the rich and elite are doing. The more billionaires you make in a year, or the more millionaires you make in a year, defines how well the country is doing. It matters not that behind all that and below all that, millions and millions of people are being cast into difficult, dangerous lifestyles because of poverty. I actually have started to believe that poverty is the greatest crime you can commit. Because if you're poor, the system destroys you. It doesn't help you. There's no truth in the system to help the poor anymore. Everything has now been tailored towards the rich and the powerful. Our world is filled with modern online advertisements. The social media platforms which touts the very big lie that you can now be connected are not there to stay in touch. They're not there for you to stay in touch any longer with your family or friends. They're there now to enslave you into a system that uses psychology and data collection to decode your life and thoughts so that you can be manipulated into purchasing more products. Their lies they're much more subtle. They're not going to tell you that you are indeed ugly, or you're too overweight, or that your hair is an absolute mess and you stink. You know, that kind of directness, well, that has now gone forever. They're the psychological experts with subtle untruths now. And they will show you an image of a woman moaning in almost an orgasmic fashion on a TV advert as she rubs her fingers through her hair under a waterfall in a beautiful tropical pool. You know, the tagline will tell you how great this product makes you feel and how your hair will be more beautiful than it's ever been before. The scene is filled with a yearning to be like that. The picture is painted of a sexually sated woman who appears with glorious hair, having experienced something so incredible. You know deep down inside you want that experience. It is a subtle sort of lie, and the cash rolls in. Your imagination has been captured, and you are now hooked and reeled in to buy yet another product to add to the long line of other products that you've purchased before and now stand in a line on the side of your bathtub. It is a lie, and at the same time it's also a very small truth, because yes, your hair will feel cleaner. I mean, after all, you just washed it. But will it be cleaner than your hair was after using the many other products that you bought? Now, the odds are the answer is no. Your hair is clean, and that is actually the truth. But the lie is it is highly unlikely that this product is superior to any other product you've used before. The advert worked well. You put down one brand in order to lift another new one, which was actually the real truth, because that was the goal of the company, as it wants to influence you to buy their products, not its competitors. The cycle continues ever onwards with a new and improved product, and we're all then enslaved in this cycle of endlessly purchasing things that we do not really need, and we do it more out of habit, which was handed us by the skill of the psychologist who studied your data and convinced you to change, and almost while you are not even aware that any of this has been happening to you. You know, it's a very real truth of modern life that now data collection and data selling has become one of the biggest industries on the planet. It actually nets more per year now than oil revenues. And you've got all of these social media sites, you've got all of your internet search engines, even your internet providers, all data mining your computers for all of this information, which is then fed through this massive machine that involves known psychological practice and people who can analyze the data. And then everything is now targeted. We're no longer human beings. We're a targeted audience who are literally being pushed and driven into consumerism. You know, I find it interesting that a certain section of the powerful is now hell-bent on killing the narrative of another certain less fortunate section of society. Recent times have seen the rise of censorship, which has conveniently been labelled as misinformation and used as a tool of suppression. This is an aspect of life I've used in my own work. And for those of you who've read Violet Stone, which is the third part of this story arc trilogy, you know, that I've released to work around Heirs to the Kingdom, you'll now be aware of how the truth can be manipulated to say one thing whilst meaning something completely different. Now, obviously, I took this aspect of real modern life into my own writing. I created an 8-book series, and I showed you the life of one couple who were acting in the best interests of the people. Now, they were genuine in all of their endeavours as they tried to seek justice for all. And in doing so, as Violet Stone now shows, everything was not quite as black and white as they had actually been led to believe. The truth actually in this case was the lie, and a narrative used to control the masses of the past, and in doing so it has now had a direct impact on the future. We see this in the world today, possibly more so than when I first began to write the story arc trilogy with Rise of the Raven. Now, I'm not going to get into the bitch fight that now surrounds some very, very modern day issues, but it really is quite clear that certain narratives that have been forced into society are now actually being challenged on a daily basis by some individuals. And the amount of people challenging the narrative of today is actually growing and expanding as more and more people start to realize that something's not quite right. And what we're finding now is some of these people who are challenging the narrative are actually being proven to be right. Now, for years, we have been banning people on internet platforms and trying to silence certain individuals. And as a result, they fought through all of the lies and all of the corruption to actually get their message across and out into the public domain. Now, this is not actually unsimilar to my character of Iona Violet in the book Violet Stone, or even, to be honest, the plight of Abigail and Birch in the Curial Chronicles. You know, all of them suffer as they unmask the truth, just as many in the world today have. We have people in society who spoke out, and their lives were targeted in such a way that they saw everything that they'd worked for taken away from them. You know, and it's got so bad, to be honest, in certain sectors that in some very, very awful cases, people have actually taken their own lives because they told the truth and were persecuted for it. It's hard to believe that we're talking about the Western democratic world here, because these are the kind of stories and tales that we expect to hear from more authoritarian, totalitarian sorts of countries like China or North Korea. It really does concern me as a person that the world has now, it's sort of now moved into sort of this big melting pot of mass division. People are for or against each other. And they have literally no ability now to sit down and actually talk things out as we used to do. We sort of descended almost into a tribal culture of shouting and threatening our opponents until they back down, or we cancel them completely and get them banned, for no real reason other than we just disagree with them. Freedom of speech, which is what created our democracies, along with freedom of thought, it's a very, very real fact. It's an unpleasant fact, but the very simple truth is it's being stifled to benefit one side or the other. And there's no real discord happening at the moment. So these issues, they're hanging there, staying unresolved, festering like some sort of cancer within society. And it's a pretty bad state of affairs, considering we're supposed to be the most educated we've ever been in history. And yet we're not at all acting like that. If anything, our behaviour currently across the planet is more primitive than it is modern, advanced. I think, as I've said many times on this podcast, if you're like a writer and you're designing characters and you're trying to weave very realistic narratives into a story and have characters react naturally in a way that the reader would expect, all of this is fantastic stuff. I mean, you can sit back literally on any social media platform and you can see all this and take notes. But I can't deny I do find it a little bit concerning that my writing appears more and more to be less like fiction. Because I'm now seeing the actions of society mirroring the similar struggles of my characters as it divides into two camps who, are opposed to each other. And it feels like society is heading into one mass civil dispute. Both sides now believe they stand for the side of truth. And it is apparent that this same divide is appearing in every single walk of life, such as the political establishment, the business community, education, medicine, biology, and even climate. Now, who is right and who is wrong is now so unclear that nothing at all is getting resolved. And one does have to wonder, if the West is simply falling towards some form of civil war or anarchy. And is it all some elaborate plan of those hidden to us behind the scenes who are pulling the strings in a very similar manner to the way in which I wrote Rhiannon in The Circle of Darkness and all through all of the story arc? It's a really interesting question, and honestly, even as an author of stories who writes about this stuff, I can't give you an honest answer, because I really no longer know what the truth of any side actually is. Watching the world at the moment feels like being stuck in a machine filled with conspiracy theories, as the truth is being hidden from all of us, or is sort of eluding us all. Which is great for people like me as I write this kind of stuff into my stories. There's talk of a big reset, but what is that exactly? Is that what we read in books like, of the likes of Alex Huxley or George Orwell? Or is the curtain starting to fall, as it did in The Wizard of Oz, revealing the true identity of the wizard, which was nothing at all like the built-up character of power that we all thought it was to be? Are the wizards going to be revealed to us soon? Or is there really a hidden agenda of authoritarian control that's going to turn us all into slaves and prisoners, where war is peace and peace is war, and life starts to look more like oceanic than it does the UK? It's just... There's so many questions at the moment, and I'm pretty sure that people are just more and more and more confused about what is actually going on. Because, the simple truth is, it could be either. Because both sides are fighting hard to get their versions of what is truth out into the mainstream world. What is truth anyhow? Is it the simple facts? Or is it the blind belief of those who've manipulated the facts? Those lines appear in one of my books, and they appear to me to be the only question that's actually worth asking. And yet, the world has not given any kind of answers at all. Which is why it does actually appear on the pre-pages of Violet Stone, and is the premise of the whole theme and story of the book. Violet Stone has now been out for, I think it's a couple of months, so I feel it's safe to kind of tiptoe a little into some of the facts of the story, because that's the most relevant question of the book. There are two truths. Which one is it? In the story, Iona Violet, who's the daughter of Runestone and Robbie from Heirs to the Kingdom, talks to her mother late one evening as she's about to embark on a test which has been set for her by Ariel and will determine what kind of queen she will become after her crowning. And she sits with her mother at the side of her table of power, and she says this: "I know I still have much to learn, and Sapphire and Ariel have taught me so much, and my powers still have to fully develop. But I cannot help, when I'm around Ariel, feeling like there is something more. I also felt it in Fleury with Alder, almost as if there's another version of the truth. Does that sound crazy?" It really is sort of odd in a way, because I've had so many conversations in my life with others who've said something similar. And a lot more of those kind of conversations recently than maybe a few years ago. Maybe it is some sort of primal thing that we have inside us. And I do wonder if there's some sort of aspect of humanity that has been lost to us, and it is now lurking within us, trying to resurface, asking us questions as to what is our own truth and what is the truth that actually surrounds us. Is it some sort of primal self-defense mechanism? We're all aware that, like Iona, something's not quite right, and that there's another version of the truth somewhere around, but we just can't see it. In Violet Stone, Rune talks to her daughter in response to her question of was there more. And as she talks about Iona's father, who is Robbie, as she remembers the day he received the Sword of Power, which was actually the Sword of Truth. "I remember the day your father got the Sword of Truth. I was so in love with him. He had no idea how deep it was. I think I've loved him since I was a tiny little girl, and I looked out of my mum's gate and saw him in the street. When that sword came to him and he lifted it up, wow, I'll never forget that. I saw the way it shone in his eyes. Oh, what a moment that was. I knew then I'd never leave his side, because he stood for the one thing that I wanted more than anything else. He stood for truth." I think it's a very, very realistic moment, and I think there's a part of all of us that kind of feels the same way. And when we do come across people who, in a way, sort of embody the truth that's around them, I think we all find ourselves admiring them and respecting them more. And maybe that's where some of our pillars of society have come from in the past. And while there are still people today who we look at them and we just know that these people are doing their utmost to get the truth out there. I mean, I could be wrong, it wouldn't be the first time. But that sense of Runestone, I think, is there with all of us. Literature is filled with those who seek the truth of their own reality. Now, it does appear to be an endless quest, and I've always felt that it was something that all writers should actually embrace. A writer has to be objective and try not to let the facts pull them one way or the other. In a sense, we have to play the role of kind of a sort of therapist and offer up thoughts and ideas. But ultimately, we have to allow those who read to make up their own minds. And so, do so by seeking out the facts, which is what, is kind of a habit that I tend to do with my writing. And I've definitely done that with Violet Stone. In the book, I present Iona Violet's journey, which challenges the narrative of Heirs to the Kingdom. It does point out faults and mistruths, and it shows the sort of impact that it has on all of those that actually surround Iona, who have been led to believe one narrative, which she is now discovering is not actually the truth. I suppose in many ways it is kind of my hope in writing this story that those who will read it will then start to understand how difficult it is to be completely sure of any truth that is sold to them. I do feel each and every person is responsible for their own truth and for understanding what truths that surround them. I think Birch best highlights this as she talks to Delhi in the Curio Chronicles Book 5, which will be coming out later this year. And she has this conversation with her while they're driving home from an art gallery one evening in Petal. And Birch turns to Delhi because Delhi at this point is questioning things. And Birch says this to her: "There's only one truth, Delhi. And if, you look at it, that is yourself. Look, we have an internet full of facts from so-called reliable sources, yeah? But we really have no idea. So many pages on the internet are now fake or hacked. There really is no definite way of telling what is and what isn't truth. So what I say is what you are, how you feel, what your instincts say. Now that's your truth. And the only thing that you can actually depend upon. We all have to understand who we truly are first, and then what we are truly capable of. And once we know that, and we accept it, we can then move forward. We must look with our eyes, and then trust only with our hearts." I think if you ask me, that's probably the only honest answer I can come up with as to how we should go about our lives these days. Instead of listening to the media and following all the theories of the many who are now publishing stuff, because we've got a whole brand new world now as citizen journalists who are live from a scene reporting things. But even then, there's the risk of it being very one-sided. I think it's up to us all to understand ourselves better and find our own truths. And instead of listening, instead of being guided, instead of being manipulated, maybe all of us should just start seeking the truth of everything. And hopefully, and it is a big hope because the world's pretty messed up at the moment, through that process, we can all come together in unity again and start having conversations. Because I think actually one of the biggest problems we've got on the planet today is no two sides want to talk to each other. And that is never going to lead to any form of peace or resolution. It saddens me to see the UK, which is a bastion of democracy and has, to be honest, for hundreds and hundreds of years has set the standard of how to live peacefully. Apart from a few world wars, Britain tends to be a pretty open-minded, peaceful place. And at the moment, my country, and it's heartbreaking to see it, is in tatters. Because we've got, the whole society is dividing now. And there's this huge culture class in the middle, and politicians are taking sides, but they're not really debating it. There's this huge fear of having a debate. And without a debate, we're never going to resolve the issues that we've got. And what needs to happen now is the lies and the deceit need to stop. And the facts and the real truth needs to be illuminated. And maybe in a sense, that's actually what's going on in the UK at the moment. There's this fight to illuminate the real truth. I don't know. I'm watching with great interest, and I am taking notes. Because, for people like me, this is brilliant. I can use this. I can work this into all of my characters and all of my stories, which is what every writer should do. I mean, it kind of bothers me that, if you love history like I do, and you understand Mao's China, and you understand Stalin, and you understand North Korea, the first people who were rooted out and killed were the writers and the historians, so that the oppressors could remove most of the truth and most of the facts from society. So maybe I'm walking a fine line by being a writer these days. I mean, the world does feel like it's closing in on all of us, and is becoming very, very oppressive. And it does feel at the moment, I certainly feel it, that no one is really being honest with us. And I think now it's up to all of us to seek the truth. It's up to all of us to become our own truth seekers. And maybe we should turn down the volume on mainstream media. It kind of bothers me that doesn't matter what channel you're on now, they're all saying the same lines in the same order. And I don't like that. I like journalism. I like proper journalism. I don't like script readers. I wanted to be a journalist when I was a young lad. But I had issues back then, so it was never going to be possible. Since then, 40 years later, 30 years later, I've become a writer. And I now write fictional stories that reflect the world I see around me. But I do think there needs to be a big change in society, where we all need to start asking, stop giving us the hidden agendas. Stop giving us the script. Start giving us the basic facts. Give us the truth. And then all of us can be truth seekers. And we can all get to the bottom and answer that one question. Which truth is it? The actual facts, or the blind belief of those who've been manipulated? Okay, it's only a short one this week. It's not quite as long as I normally talk for, but I'm kind of hitting and missing on the Writer Life channel at the moment because I've just got so much going on in my life. I'm working on the edit for the final Curios story. I'm busy promoting Violet Stone. I'm trying to get more updates to the podcast whilst working on behind the scenes videos so that I can put more book samplers on this channel so that people get a better idea of how I work and what I write. It's a very tough world being in the book industry at the moment. Selling books is really, really difficult. So, if you kind of like the idea of some of the things I talk about and you kind of fancy the idea of reading my book, every book, I'm a small indie author, doing my bit to try and get my words out there. I'd like to think I write some great stuff. I like to think I write some interesting and captivating stuff. And if you'd love to read it, everything's available either in an ebook format or a printed format. It's entirely up to you. I know cash is hard at the moment for everybody. A lot of people in the UK are absolutely broke at the moment, which doesn't help me because books are now classed as a luxury product. But, if the ideas that I put out here interest you, then I can guarantee they're woven within some great stories, which I've spent the last 20 years of my life putting together for you. Thank you for listening in today and giving the channel a shot. I know there's not a lot of you who subscribe, but I don't really mind. This is about getting my thoughts and ideas out into the airwaves so I can share them all over the place and hopefully bring in more people. I'll be back very shortly with some more. And I will add to the channel, hopefully at a bit of a quicker rate at the moment, because it has been a very, very busy summer for me, promotions-wise, and hopefully I'm going to have a little bit more time now to invest in getting the podcasts up on a bit of a more regular basis. So until the next one, I will leave you here. Thank you once again for listening to the Writer Life podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Writer Life podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, or there are areas of Robin's stories you would like him to discuss, please add your thoughts and questions in the comments, and we will include them in a future episode. You can follow Robin on all his social media links, which you will find listed below, and please, like and subscribe to this channel, so you get the latest notifications when he posts. All Robin's books are available in digital and print formats to purchase or download through all online book sales sites.